Hooty hoo! Hey everybody! Welcome to episode 53 and season 2. Okay, guys, we're here with a very, very special guest, which he's not gonna like that I'm saying this, but when I first started this, I started interviewing some of my friends and so on, and people I actually knew, and obviously later down the road, I found a lot of people I didn't. But this woman I absolutely have known for probably since it's even before I had her in fourth grade because she knew me in certain, there was like activities after school and she kind of got acquainted with my mom and stuff. But, you know, she's a person I love to death because I could not have done half the things I did in school without her. And one of the things I've said previously is I also wanted to focus on more than just the people with disabilities because I think parents, caregivers, and obviously in her case, a teacher and a vision itinerant, a lot of the things that she did are just as important. So, yes, why don't you tell us who you are and, I don't know, a little about yourself?
My name is Lois Robins, and I was TJ's teacher for many years. And now I'm very proud to say I'm his friend, and hopefully he's mine. And I taught children with vision problems in the school district for 32 years of Philadelphia. And then I went on to become a social worker at CHOP, the Children's Hospital of Philadelphia, in the pediatric stroke program. Then for a very short time, I was a hospice social worker because my mother was on hospice. And then I went back to my love of teaching, and I actually think I retired tomorrow. Yes, excuse me, yesterday. Well, there is a slim chance I might go back to the school to help some of the little kids who have some special issues.
Right. And I did that with you, I think, twice. Um, you were taking care of some of the kids. You were, what was it? One of those, like daycare, right? Is that what you were talking about?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So this is sort of a daycare situation. They were 3 year olds.
Right.
They're
Um,
yeah.
yeah, of course. So obviously, probably start from the beginning. What actually made you get into teaching?
I didn't know there was another job. My mother was a teacher in Philadelphia. My aunt was a teacher for Philadelphia. Another aunt was a counselor in Philadelphia public schools, and my uncle was a principal in Philadelphia schools. So I grew up thinking that's what you did when you grew up, and I'm very, very blessed because that's what I wanted to be, and that's what I became.
Huh.
Um, so I grew up for a little bit of time right outside of Philly. My father passed away when I was an infant. My mom remarried, and we had to live in the city. So we moved when I was in sixth grade, and I went to city schools. Not the best student because I didn't particularly like school, although don't tell TJ I said that.
Yeah.
Um,
Mm-hmm.
and basically we didn't have that much money. Everybody, unless you were really bright, we went to Temple, which back then was sort of like the equivalent of community college because it was the cheapest place. And went there, got an education degree, also got a degree in early childhood because I knew I'd like the little ones. And I also knew pretty early that I didn't want to teach children that were, quote, regular in a regular class. They just didn't seem all that interesting to me. Um, and later I learned it was a good thing because when I used to have to sub when we were at Overbrook Educational Center for, quote, a regular class, and 33 kids taking out a box of crowns was just way too loud for me.
Okay.
And so, so when I was at Temple, I decided to go get a degree in special education. All growing up, my best friend had polio, which is right now a disease that you don't really see that much of at all in developed countries. I think maybe in developing countries it's occasional, but there's a vaccine
Right.
that
Yeah.
everybody here gets when they're little, so you don't really see it.
Hmm.
And again, she was bright, she was fine. So I thought, okay, that might be just a little bit more interesting. So I applied for she was physically impaired, so I applied for that and thought, okay, that sounds interesting. And literally the day before school starts, I get a call from Temple, and they say, well, we don't really have a program for physically handicapped back then. The nomenclature changes constantly. And even though they advertised it, and they said, how about visually impaired? And I quote, that's like the same thing. So again, it was
Yes.
that day before I said, okay, what did I know? And that's how I got started. And I was with the same program for my entire career in Philadelphia, just doing different things.
Right. Yeah, I remember when I first met you. It was some sort of after school thing. I don't remember what it was, but you always seemed really nice, and I was like, oh, I hope I get her one day. And I think it was
Um,
like 2 years later I got you. Um, and which is the irony because at the in second grade I had a or was it second or third. Might have been third. Yeah, it was third because I had Miss Frost for second grade. Third grade, I had a teacher who was almost totally blind, and she wasn't as loving. She didn't seem to understand as much as you did. Um, she was an okay person, but yeah, I don't know what her issues were. But when I got you, I was just like, okay, this is gonna be fun. And then it was a whole bunch of different characters in that class. Uh,
and
but
some of them you did interview.
yes, absolutely, Sophia.
Yeah,
But she was probably one of the least amount of characters in that class because she was still kind of figuring out who she was as a person, and
right.
but yeah, you had so many great people. I mean, again, it was a really fun class. It wasn't just like this belligerent class. I mean, again, we had characters.
Right.
And we all pretty much got along. And I remember you doing like story time and everything, and we just had a good time. But one of my like fondest moments of that class is where I knew you actually cared about us and me specifically. Is that we had I might have said this to you before, but we had a math test. I don't remember what kind of I don't know, multiplication. I don't know what it was. It's fourth grade, so who knows? And I gave you my paper, and you said you could do better and redo these two, whatever it was, however many problems. You do them over. I was like, oh, okay, this isn't my grade. Okay, fine. And so I redid it, and you gave me an A plus plus plus. Um, and I was
That's
like,
so funny. I have
yeah.
no clue, no memory of it, but yeah.
Right, and but it was like and again, and it like really invigorated me. And like when I talk about like my past school years, and I think about like where I was in eighth grade and seventh grade and sixth, like I didn't feel that inspired to do work. I didn't feel like I was that smart, and I just was like, screw it, I'm out of here. I mean, but when you did that for me, like you could have easily just given me whatever it would have been, an 85, a 90, whatever it was, or a B plus or whatever. You actually made me redo it because you knew I could do better. And that's kind of made me know what kind of teacher you actually were. And you didn't even make it through the whole year. I remember that year you left at the
I
very
became
end.
an assistant. Yeah.
But yeah, that's what really made me know what kind of teacher you were. Um,
Oh,
because like I said, it did a lot for me. Just as when you're a kid like that, you don't really know. You don't think any of these people care about you. You don't think. You just think they're
that's
teachers and doing their
really,
job.
hmm. You know, it's that's, and I call you T. That's our nickname, TJ.
Right.
Um, that really is so sad to me. Um, that because teachers should care. Everybody should care about everybody else. But if you go into teaching, it's not for the money. It's not because it's an easy job. It should be because you really care and want to make a difference in children's lives. So,
Absolutely. Yeah.
that makes me pretty sad to hear you say that. One of the things I did love to do, which was a little offbeat, um, when we were at that school, it had been converted from something other things,
Right.
and
Right.
I happened to have an outside phone. This was way before cell phones. An outside line in my in the room,
Mm.
and if I knew a parent could be disturbed during the day, when you guys did something outstanding, I would make you call your mom or dad, and it always had to start with everything's fine. Mrs. Robbins just wanted you to know that, whether you knew a word that I didn't think you would be able to know, or you got a good mark on a test, or you wrote a great story. And I mean, I always felt like parents hear, especially parents of children with special needs, they hear so much negative stuff of what your child can't do. So I'm going to make sure you know what your child can do.
Right.
And when the parents like first started that, it was like, oh my gosh, I can't believe it. Because of course, when you get a phone call from school, it's rarely a good thing. So I wanted them to experience, yes, your child is incredible and look what they can do.
Right.
So I do remember that part. I don't remember, giving the test back and say, I know you can do better, but
well, I don't know if
I
you
appreciate
remember,
that.
you also had
Yeah,
my sister's father and my cousin Nano
right,
come in, and they, I don't know what it was about Spanish culture, but I don't know
right,
exactly the reference. I don't know, Cinco de Mayo, I don't know what it was. You just had to come in and they told the story, and it was just like a fun, hour of
right.
the class. Um but
And I
no,
guess,
yeah, go ahead.
oh, sorry, honey.
No, you good.
I guess that's something I always found interesting. Other cultures, other ways of looking at the world, and I think it's important for us as global citizens to learn about different cultures and learn about not everything is seen, and no pun intended, through our eyes.
Right.
That we need to know how other people view things. We need to know what their culture means to them. If one's not right, one's not wrong, all great. So I actually do remember. I can picture um, Lee and your mom and Nano sitting in the classroom and talking about it.
Yeah, right
But
in
that
front of
part
the
I do
whiteboard.
actually remember. Yeah. Mhm.
Yeah.
Yep.
No, and you were like, you were pretty hands on with what you did. I remember something just dawned on me. I haven't thought about it probably since then, but you used to have like a little saying or a quote or whatever,
Right.
like uh, I don't know, like money burns a hole in your pocket, and then you had us like do like a little a sentence or whatever, and then you would have us
Right.
all read them. But then you knew some people didn't like, especially with me, I didn't like the motivation or the speaking in front of the class. So you would just read it for me. Of course, my handwriting was crap, but you
But I
pulled through
could
it,
read it. Right.
right?
Yep.
And
Yep.
but again, stuff like that matters to kids. Like it especially Ian, it's different when you're in high school and all that. But fourth grade and fifth grade and sixth grade and that, like you're really, it matters what you do, and to put an influence on a student and actually make them, put them in the right direction. Because I mean, again, you also knew there was a lot of teachers that were really shitty in that school, and they weren't as nice, especially the non-VI teachers, where they just were really, nonchalant about what we were going through. Um,
Right.
and
And
what, yeah,
and there was like a reason that I did that. There was like a saying, as you say, of the day, because I wanted to improve writing skills. Also, kids, because everybody was bused, kids came in at different times, so
right,
it's hard to start a quote regular lesson. Plus, um, the children in the classes were at much different levels. So I was never expecting that child A is going to do the same thing as child B, and that was fine. And it also actually gives teachers a way to see what kids need help with. Like, do they not get like the word there, THERE versus THEIR?
right.
So it was a great like evaluation tool for me too. And I actually thought it was fun because some of the sayings like were it's raining cats and dogs. What does that really mean?
Right.
So yeah, actually that was pretty fun for me too.
Yeah, that was fun. And as we said, like you kind of left into that year, and I know I was kind of like sad 'cause I was like, well, this was just such a fun class, and then the guy we got wasn't too bad, but I mean, it was just a different class. It wasn't anywhere near the same. Um, and then we go on to the next year, and you actually have a whole different role now. But you're still
Right.
in my life. I just didn't know you were. I just didn't know where you went because we weren't. Again, now we have each other's numbers, and I can ask you what you're going through. But you know, at that point, I just didn't know if I'd ever see you again. So,
Oh,
but what did you end up doing that next year?
So there's different programs within the whole program is called the Program for the Visually Impaired. So there were classrooms for children K in kindergarten through grade 8, and then there was basically no public high school after that. Although there was Overbrook School for the Blind, which is what's called an approved private high school. So I became an itinerant. So I went to see students in different schools. I was not their full time teacher at all. But if they needed flares or if they needed magnifiers, and it was a lot of consulting with the classroom teacher. They were in, I'll say, regular classes, but some of the kids were in multiply handicapped classes. So I might have brought like activities for them. Because the vision program was so small, so we actually had money from the state, so we
Right.
could order things that would help the students in terms of their vision, in terms of sensory things. And then I also went to kids who just happened to be, let's say, in a regular fifth grade, who the teacher I might need to say, okay, the child sees best out of this corner of their eye, therefore would be a good placement for their desk. They also have the right to get up and move around the room whenever they need to sort of help them with strategies. Also, act as a link between the parents, the school, the child, to sort of see what they need. We did a lot of evaluations to see if students will qualify for our program. Like people used to say, oh, he's blind in one eye. Well, that doesn't happen. That doesn't mean anything to us. It does mean stuff if you're driving, but we have to go through certain legal definitions. So it's really with the better eye, what's called um, your vision is, what's it, 20/60 or worse in the better eye with correction. So sometimes glasses don't help, which is a shock to a lot of people. They don't quite get it. Why don't you just get them a pair of glasses? Well, for some people, glasses don't help. And again, it's with the better eye. There's also like a field cut description. And then legally blind means something else that is 2200 or worse in the better eye with correction. So
Mm.
often you would get like people, well, he can see, he's not really blind. So to understand like the difference, and it's really a legal definition between legally blind and blind is important as well. And then depending on your vision, might be eligible for other things from the government.
Right. No,
So
absolutely.
that's what I did for many, many, many years. And so I tell the story about with your mom and OSC and FLC.
Oh, we'll get into that very shortly. Yes, I was
Okay.
completely an idiot and I was absolutely wrong. I'm not hiding this. Um,
Okay.
um, but yeah, she got me so many things. Laptops. She got me. Well, I think one of the favorite things that you got me that really benefited me is these red notebooks with the white paper and it was really big, dark
Really.
lines.
Right.
That helped me more than anything. I don't think I've ever even seen those ever again. But
Well, actually, we used to make them at the school.
oh,
We would
really?
get, yeah,
Okay.
we would get there were different, and that's like one of the things I would do. I would have take the different kinds of paper, and again, glare is often a big issue.
Right.
And these were special non-glare paper,
Right.
and we would see what worked best. So there are different with sort of like college line paper and regular line paper, to see what the student liked best, and then we had a brailleist at the school, Maxine Cook, who would make the books for us. So
Right.
that's how you got them. They were pretty
Gotcha.
special.
Okay. Yeah, I guess they
Yeah.
were. Before we get into what you were just about to go into, did you have any like before becoming a teacher? Did you have any like experiences with people? I mean, besides the people with polio,
Much more.
was there any experiences you had with people with either vision or disabilities?
Nope, not really. Oh, I know. Before I went into that, I think in my regular education training, we had to do, a field placement, and I was at the Widener School, which is the same money as Widener University, but this is Widener School it was for children with physical disabilities. Um, and I I did my one of my internships there, and funny that the per she was not my what's called cooperating teacher. She wasn't the person who I was under, but I remember her as clear as day. She was like the most amazing teacher. She only is like a year or maybe two older than I am. And I'm friendly with her to this day, get emails from her every day, Kathy Britannic. And she runs a group called the Rolling Rebels because most of these people are in wheelchairs, and these are all people that graduated from the Widener School or somehow are connected.
Oh, awesome.
And some are in their 50s. And they are just, and I'd love to talk more about the Rolling Rebels, the most incredible group of people I've ever met. And I just love being with them, and we meet once a month now. Of course, we've been doing Zoom every week,
Right.
but we're beginning to meet in small groups. And she is just one of the most phenomenal people I know.
Cool. That's
And
awesome.
so are the people who are in the group.
Right. Oh, that's awesome. Um, yeah. Okay. So she was referring to something a minute ago. But before that, like, so when you became the vision itinerant for me, you would get me some things, but your like personality changed towards me, like, and still in a good way. But you were more loving when you were a teacher, and now you kind of were giving more tough love, which I needed, absolutely. I didn't know that then, but I needed it. I needed a little bit of both because I was very sensitive, and I was, in all honesty, I was a very, when I talk about I never did drugs and all that, I was just really afraid of my own shadow. So it wasn't that I wouldn't have done it. It's just I was afraid of everything, so I just said no to everything, which in a way it benefited me now. But so yeah, so then I started, seeing you off and on every so often, maybe once a week or whatever, and you would get me some things I needed. But this is where when I said she's this little feisty Jewish lady, it started to really come out, and I was like, oh, like, who's this lady? And you really pushed me. And I remember being in seventh grade, and we were in a classroom, and you called me out. And I mean, if you want to tell a story, you can.
I don't remember it. Dad?
Oh well, yeah. I mean, she
Yeah.
basically said that I had look. I honestly I gave up on myself. A lot of teachers kind of gave up on me too, and
Oh,
I really just didn't feel any. I didn't have any need to go to any kind of good school. I mean, I remember in seventh grade there were certain presentations and stuff, and I was so against doing that because I hated talking in front of the students that I just didn't show up to school for those you know for that work. And I just said, I'm just gonna go to OSB because a certain teacher told me that's basically where I was gonna head anyway, and I didn't have a chance. So I just said, okay, and again, this is where my mom said, adults, what they say goes, and it matters. And of course, that was wrong. But so then, yeah, she pulls me out, and I already have my mind made up. And if a lot of people don't know, seventh grade is kind of like the barometer of like, where you're going to end up, even though eighth grade matters too, but you do a lot of your
but
more.
not that much because basically by November 1st, unless it's a special situation, people know where they're going because
Right,
that's when the decisions have been made.
right. And you start
Yeah,
doing
but you
all.
can't tell that to kids because then they won't do anything in eighth grade.
Right. And so you start
Yeah.
applying and you start, you take all the most, what's that test that you take? Not the SATs. What is
Um.
is it,
Oh, it's like a state. I forget which one it
yeah,
is.
yeah.
It's a standardized test.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's that version of the SATs for that. But
Yeah.
and so uh yeah, and then my grades weren't the greatest. I'm not even gonna try to sugarcoat it. It wasn't. I didn't put any effort in. I didn't care. I mean, I put effort in gym. I put effort into art class, but I didn't put effort into math and English and history. I mean, once in a while I would really apply myself to something I liked, but yeah, I just didn't care, and I didn't. I was very low on myself at that point. And so she pulls me out of class, and we get into an argument because, and again, I'm swearing at her. I'm just frustrated because I'm telling her like I'm going to OSB. I don't want to go, and she's telling me that her and my mom basically have joined teams against me and told me that I'm going to this high school called Franklin Learning Center, which is at the time was a really really good high school. I don't know what it is now, and they have a teacher there that can actually be very beneficial to me, and she's sent a bunch of other visually impaired students there as well. So she had like a good rapport with the school. Um, it didn't really matter about the grades. It was more about just getting me in there and trying to get me to learn new things and just kind of get me out of this funk. Um, so, I mean, I know you don't remember the whole conversation, but like, what was it that you actually saw in me?
Let me say that Overbrook School for the Blind is a wonderful school, as are most schools, but it has to be the right fit. And I would always talk about like not every school is right for every child, and not every child is right for every school. Maybe what you don't know, previously I had this stuff with your mom, and she did want you to go to OSB. And I had to promise her, give me 6 months. If he doesn't make it within 6 months, I will, it's paperwork. I will do the paperwork and we'll transfer him to OSB. I also have to tell you, your mom, who I adore, you know that.
Uh huh.
In seventh grade, I think you had Dare or something. It's like, what do you want to be when you grow up, kind of thing, which I think in seventh grade is personally a little young, but they didn't ask me that. And you said, I don't know if you remember, you wanted to be a basketball player.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Because
And when I,
as sorry, didn't mean to cut off. Because there
yeah,
actually was a project that I had with Miss Bloody that time. She was there for 1 year,
right.
and it was our English teacher. She was nice, but I don't think she had a real good handle of the class, and
Plus, he was very young,
very
too.
very young. Yeah, I mean,
Yeah,
some people thought she was almost one of
a
the
kid.
students. Like she was
Yeah.
super young. Anyway, and one of our projects was to do a book report, which you started to help me on, and I did like Michael Jordan's document biography or whatever it was, and so the whole goal was, you're supposed to like kind of be the character, and you're supposed to come out dressed like them and do all that, and I did the book report. And I did all the paperwork, but I didn't show up for the presentation because I didn't want to do it. I was too afraid to do it. And so, yeah, so go back to what you were saying as far as about being a
Oh,
basketball
that
player.
part I didn't know. I
Right.
think
Yeah.
this is part of Dare. And when I talked to your mom, which again, even as I hear you and your friends speak, there's like things that you guys don't know that went on because you were kids behind the scenes. And your mom said to me, I want him to be whatever he wants to be. I don't want to dash his hope. And I felt like, okay, but the chances of you being a basketball player for the NBA are pretty slim. So, and I would say to my own children who don't have a vision problem, just in case that doesn't work out, let's think of something else.
Right.
Um, so again, I gave your mom so much credit, and I actually my very first job teaching was teaching kindergarten. In the program, when the kids would talk about, and they were 5, when what they want to be. Well, basically, the only job that a lot of them knew was a bus driver. Well, that's okay at 5. It's not okay when you're in seventh grade not to have a realistic expectation of
Right.
what you might want to do.
Right.
So that was like another humorous thing, humorous Pam moment.
Yeah.
So again, when you were in seventh grade, and believe me, long before you even knew about it, T, I was talking with your mom, and we were going over the different options, and I knew FLC was a really good fit. In fact, um, later on, after you, because you really led the way and proved to them that kids can make it there, even with a vision problem. Miss Gwynevin, who I would love to get in touch with, but I can't find her number anywhere, said to me, um, we don't care who you bring in, meaning any of the kids in the vision program, as long as you take care of them. And we did. And, I remember meeting with her and discussing what photophobia meant. And she said, that's fine. He can wear a hat. It just has to be an FLC hat. I said, okay, we got a deal. So again, there's a lot of things that students don't always know that go on behind the scenes. And then we both thank God for Mrs. Johnson, who
Mm-hmm.
is an absolute gem. And I knew it was going to work. I didn't know. I was hoping it was going to work. And in the beginning, it was really touch and go. For the first 3-4 months, I didn't know if you were going to make it. And
Yeah.
then you just said, okay, I'm going to do it. And you got like more, I want you to explain the credit system. More credits faster than any other student in the school's history.
Right.
But I think you need to explain what the credit system is because it's very unusual.
Right, because every school kind of has it, but it's not on this level. And college has it too. College is probably a little more similar, but in this way,
Right.
like you get a credit. Basically, to pass each class, you need at least 10 credits. And there's just a certain, there's a certain amount of work that equals up to that 10th credit or that first credit. And then you go on to the next, the next plan and the next one. You just go, and then there's bonus credits. There's like extra little side projects that you can do to get. I think at the top you get like 13 credits. But most people, as long as you get those 10, you don't need the three. It's just it helps you and it looks better on your report and all that. But overall, each class, so you would have, was it five? No, six, because you need 60 credits. So you'd have six classes and you needed 60 credits to pass every year. And then to be on like honor roll, you needed like 70 or something like that. So to get an extra 10 is really not that easy because, again, there's a little bunch of those little side ones, and then there's other stuff you can get, like if you do like the AIDS walk, like a lot of these little, what were they called? Oh, Miss Johnson
Like
used to,
service learning.
yeah, like service credits. That's what they were called. Service credits, and it was just for certain things you would do, and there's stuff that you can do in the school and help out and whatever. And obviously ninth grade, I end up being like most improved. I end up with like 65 or whatever I end up. But when we were there was like 2 months left of the year, and I was at the bottom. I think I was passing Mr. Kiefer's class in science, and I really wasn't doing well at all. Like I just did. I wasn't. I was kind of just, I was when I was really into Yu-Gi-Oh cards, and and a lot of my friends were in the same boat, and not just like Medina, but like a lot of the people that I end up becoming friends with, we were all just like sinking together. So that wasn't helping anyway. But one of the things that I don't know who made it happen. I think it might have been Miss Johnson, but she took me and Medina out of the classes together because we had three together. And I think maybe you guys did that on purpose, like as far as putting us in the same classes, because you thought maybe we'd have some familiarity, we know each other, maybe it would help. But it really didn't. We got one credit together in math class, but it didn't really. From there, we just kind of just goofed off and didn't do much. And it was at a point where I just wasn't talking to Miss Johnson, and you weren't there all the time. And so I don't know what my breaking point was, but I just remember feeling like a total loser. Like I knew I was failing, and I'm seeing all these kids in my class like celebrate their credits, and I'm just not. And towards the end of the year, it was just like a huge push to just get it all done, and we got it done. Literally to the last day, I got my last credit on the last couple hours of the last day of the year in ninth grade. But yeah, I mean, again, that was where you and Miss Johnson came in completely. Like I couldn't have done without either of you because I had to stay in that mode. But it was also the first time I actually realized I had anxiety because I was now anxious, but I was anxious for credits, which is a good
Mm-hmm.
thing, but it drove me crazy. It was like an addictive high in a way. But yeah, so it was, it was one of those where I had to push myself, but I needed someone to push me as well because I would really kind of deviate from the plan and want to go like, nah, I can't do it. And then, that's where you and Miss Johnson came into play and just constantly just stayed on me. But the next year is when you kind of, it almost like you realize like you kind of did your job, which you did. You did more than enough, but you kind of just, I don't know where you went in your life at that point, but then that's when you started sending other people like Miss Skolnick, to help
Oh,
me.
I went to social work school.
Okay. Yeah. And you
Yeah.
started sending other people. I mean, you would show up from time to time, but you really knew
Huh.
I kind of molded already. And that year really kind of pushed me. Once I reached like junior year, that was when I was kind of like on my own, other than maybe that Braille teacher. But yeah, I mean, you like I said, you just kept pushing me, and that was is what I needed. But again, most students don't get that, and that's why so many of us fail, or end up going to places like OSB. And again, OSB isn't the worst case scenario, but in some ways it is, because it's not the, if you really want to get somewhere in life and you want to push yourself and get better jobs and better colleges, OSB is probably not gonna. It's probably not gonna give you the best tools and the best, the best quality of work to keep, to teach you in life and keep you on the right track. Um, and so yeah, I mean, obviously, I've thanked you many times, but yeah, you kept me on that track. Um, so what did you do from there, as far as once you kind of stepped back a little bit from helping?
Well, because I also knew Mrs. Johnson was there,
Right.
and if there was an issue or a problem, uh, we knew about it. Also, because I think it was really great that Mrs. Johnson, you should explain, was the resource room teacher.
Right.
And she had a really good pulse on what you needed and when to push. And I loved her saying, what? Do you remember the saying, see? I'm going to love you until you learn. I'm going to love you so much until you learn to love yourself.
Right. Absolutely.
And she was always there. And it was just great having so many vision kids in one school, because here's the beginning of the school year. Here's a couple boxes of flares, or here's the paper that you needed. Also, the teachers really in the school bought into having a child with a special need, and it was like really no big deal. Granted, I'm sure that we handpicked teachers for you, but we're dealing with personality. Obviously, you don't want like a new teacher, but by and large, that was the atmosphere of the school. It was not, I wouldn't say hippie-ish, because I am of a certain age, but it didn't matter. You have blue hair, you have red hair, nothing mattered there.
Right.
Okay. I remember the head of the student council came to me once, and here's a, student, and said, is there anything that we can do for your kids? And I'm like, no. I mean, it wasn't like a big deal. Nothing was a big deal there, because of the environment that Doc, who was the principal, set up, and Miss Quennevin, who really had such power in the school to run it, and the counselors and the nurses. Like, everybody just felt like this is the school that we want for our students.
Yeah.
Even to the point, like, you're not going to get a test, and who got the A+. I'm like, I guess that math test I gave you. It was more like, okay, let's see that you know the material. What can you do with it? If you needed to show your mastery in another way, that was okay too. And for some kids, we needed to, and that was okay. Sort of everything was okay. And everybody bought into it. The students there, I think, were normally, and unfortunately, I think many of your listeners might have experienced this. If you are different in any way, it's hard to make friends. But there it just seemed like, whatever. Yeah, okay, you have a vision problem, you wear a hat, whatever. Which is so wonderfully different than, unfortunately, most places are.
Yeah. Yeah, it was for the most part. Yeah. I mean, you have your little comments and stuff like that, but yeah, overall it wasn't, if you look at it that way, yeah, it wasn't that bad. Honestly, I would probably say it was it was worse in OEC
You had told me that, yeah, which I was pretty shocked at.
because of the division. I mean, we're really basically
Right.
on the opposite side. There, a lot, different floors and stuff, but a lot of times it was just, okay, the fourth grade visually impaired class is here, and the non-VI class is right over there. And we
Right.
constantly would go by each other and see each other, and there's a lot of laughing and comments, and just these are the
Right.
slow classes.
And I think I explained after maybe it was Joe that you guys may not have known it, but there was a difference. The students in the VI classes were generally a little bit slower academically, and that's why academic kids we try to push, spur onto, quote, the regular class as quickly as possible. Some kids weren't ready for that, and some kids in the VI classes will never be ready for it. They needed much more individualized attention,
Right.
and a slower pace.
Right. But that's the
So
thing.
that is what.
You're
That is why.
you're going. I'm sorry. Go.
Yeah, that is why there was a difference between a VI class and the regular classes.
Oh yeah, it was necessary. But again, there was teachers like you who just saw stuff in certain people. It's not like you pulled everyone out of those classes. Like you
No.
that one class you had, you pulled like four of us out. I mean, you had Michael Anderson, you had me, and you had Sophia, and you had Medina.
Right,
And I think that was about it from
right,
that specific class. And then you pushed them, and weirdly enough, three of us went to the same school, other than Sophia.
right, right,
And but yeah, you found stuff in these students, and again, and they all don't work. Some of them didn't work. Some of them you did find, and they just you couldn't get as much out of them. But that's, I mean, you look at people with like addiction issues, like people who, how many people relapse. It's more likely. I mean, it's like a spare. It's like maybe 15% or something small on that level for full recovery. Like most people just end up going back. So when you actually fix or heal people, it's a small percentage of people you're going to actually be able to reach and help. And like with you,
right,
like, yeah, like, I mean, you probably had a much higher percentage than addiction, but still,
right.
yeah, there were some failures, but that's not, you get us in the right, your goal is to just get us in a place to where we can succeed and help as best as you
Right.
can. And you kind of hope for the
And
best.
for some of the children, even though they were your peers, they didn't have like the innate academic ability that you did. So they were never going to, it was just going to be, they were just going to end up sitting in a quote regular class. They needed the small class setting. So it was really a matter of academic ability or potential
Right.
than anything else. But you wouldn't know that because it's none of your business what somebody else can or can't do.
Right.
So,
Well,
but that was why there was such a division of quote VI classes and regular classes.
right. And, your job or what you did is to just try to get us to realize that we were whatever gifted, and then we actually had some intelligence and we actually could succeed, because so many of us
Right.
were just like ugh. And again, a lot of us came from different households and just different lifestyles, and some of it was just look, like, we talk about me and Medina all the time. I hope I can get him on here. He had a very rough life, and I had to a certain degree a rough life, not as much, not as
Hmm.
far as parenting and stuff like that. I mean, at least with my mom. But we just had a lot of bad things that happened to us, and a lot that I have talked about on here. And so, you know, and again, a lot of you teachers don't know that stuff, but you have to try to care, and you have to try to figure out how to get past that, and show us that, yeah, you are talented and you do have gifts. You just got to apply yourself. And that's hard, because school isn't something that we look at, especially at that age, where we're just like, oh yeah, school. Oh, I'd love to just, read a book. Like, no, it
Well,
doesn't seem fun at all.
and a number of times I would say it was, and people, you've talked about Philly a lot, and it is, some areas are rough and some schools stink, but I often would feel like, oh, good, you have a vision problem, which sounds paradoxical, but because we're going to pull you out of your yucky school. I was thinking of another word, but I won't say it.
Mm-hmm.
And
She
we're going
doesn't
to put
curse.
you in a better school, and we're going to give you a teacher to make sure you get the most out of life as you can.
Right.
So if you look at the average person, maybe in a not great Philadelphia public school, you guys were better, and some that was actually part of the decision. What could that school offer? And if
Mm-hmm.
we didn't like the school, okay, and sometimes we would fudge it. I have to say, I don't think I'll go to jail at this point. How bad your vision was
Right.
to get you into a school where hopefully it would be more caring and it would better meet your needs. And there would always be a teacher who was responsible for looking out for you.
Right. Yeah. No. Absolutely. So what did you end up doing after the fact? After I graduated and all that, and you said you started to work with Chop. What did you do with them?
Right. So, and it was actually at when we were at OEC, I had she was sort of a supervisor, and she sort of said to me, "You give too much service to two of your schools." And I knew what she meant. FLC was one, and actually Widener, because at that point, Widener, the school for children with physical disabilities, was my other school.
Right.
And basically, I didn't have a whole lot of other schools, and that's how there were usually about 6 or 7 itinerant teachers and we split up the city, and because they were fine with it, and I was great with it. So but I did take offense, and then she sort of backtracked. But and it just so happened that day I was taking a class just for fun because you can take classes just for fun when you're older
Oh, okay.
at a Jewish organization, and I happened to see, and again, it's just the way it is. We have a Jewish expression called Bershert, meant to be, a brochure, and it said, get a master's in social work, a pen, and a certificate in Jewish communal service at GRAC, this one organization. And I said, I don't even know what a social worker is. I never met one, but it's not chemical engineering, which I knew there
Hmm.
was no way I could do. So I said, okay, I'll try it. Let me see. I'll apply. I didn't make a big deal about it. I was shockingly got in, and I was really excited about it. And I don't know if you remember Mel. I'm not really good about who's what grade or not. And she said to me, and she didn't know what a social worker was. And she said, well, that's like what you do now. Because I went to school, I think part time at night, but then when you had to do a practicum, it had to be during the day. And I think you guys were in 11th grade. I can't remember. I'm sorry. And I sort of asked, would that be okay? And she's like, yeah. The kids I really cared about gave me their blessing to do it. So I went to there. At first, I thought I wanted to do adoption and foster care, and then and it was great. I had a great experience. I was actually at Pearl S. Buck Foundation, which is outside of Philadelphia, and I got to go to Korea, which was amazing. But I also knew, no, I don't really think that that's what I want. And one of my professors, this woman, Simi Trachtenberg, worked at CHOP, and she said, you're going to be at CHOP. Okay. All right. And she also had a connection at Weiner. Again, in this sort of, this community is very supportive and almost insular. So I said, okay, great. And it was really hard to get into CHOP. So under her tutelage, I went to CHOP, and I loved it. And I graduated from that, and I wasn't really ready to go be a social worker. I know you were a senior. You and Medina were seniors,
Right.
and then another one of my former students, Candace, her mom actually worked at CHOP because unfortunately she was at CHOP so much that they reach out to parents and they give them jobs. And she called me and she said, "Can you come down here right now? There's a job for you." And I said, "Well, I can't because I'm teaching." I knew I was going to take a year off, or I thought I was, before I even applied for jobs. And I said, "No, because I'm teaching. I'm going to work now. But can I send you my resume?" I guess it was like if you used a CHOP computer, like you got points, or it was easier to get into the system. I'm not sure why. So I sent her my resume. She brought it to the head of the stroke program, to Dr. Rebecca Icord, who is also absolutely amazing. And so I never even got there. And then a few days later, I met with Dr. Icord, and it seemed to be a great fit. And I remember it was the day after Thanksgiving, because I also had to meet with the head of social work. And we met, and we talked a lot about Kansas's dog Fluffy. And I was offered the job, which then I said, "Can I wait until January?" And they said yes. So it's just how it worked out. Um, so it was a wonderful experience. Now that I'm on Facebook, I reconnected with a lot of my former students who are now in high school, or former, I should say, patients and their families. And I have to say that work wise, that was the best thing I ever did. One of the moms, Shannon, came to me and said, and the most common time for kids to have stroke is when they're an infant, when they're just being born. And Shannon came to me and said, "You've got to get me another family to talk to. Nobody believes my kid had a stroke." Because when you think about strokes, you think about people who are old and maybe lifestyle's not that great. And that has absolutely nothing to do with pediatric stroke, completely different. So we started, I said, okay. And I started a support group and really learned the value of support. And these are people who were from no way the same at all, like different ethnic groups, different religious, different racial groups, different economic groups, everything. But yet became such a support for each other, and till today are support for each other. I see them on Facebook all the time, and it's been wonderful. And then I guess I was at Penn, and one of my professors said, you should apply. There's a doctoral program. And I'm like, at this point, I'm in my 50s. I'm thinking, really? Come on, I'm a little old for that. But again, I decided to take a risk. And amazingly, I was accepted. And of course, academically, for me, that was like the thrill of my life. I loved the program. It was extremely difficult for me because I was not a writer, because I grew up in a time where English was like fill in the blank or what's the multiple choice question. So I was horrible writing. But there was a teacher, Bobby, who really, really encouraged me. And she read every word of my dissertation multiple times. And Bobby Sands, Dr. Roberta Sands. And at one point she said, you're probably tired of hearing from me. And to be honest, I was, but I said, no, I really appreciate it. And Sophia, who you had on, became my editor, which is sort of ironic because here she was my teacher. I was her teacher, and now she was my teacher. And I actually interviewed you can look it up online, it's there, Hearing His Story, a qualitative study of fathers of pediatric stroke survivors. Because I wanted to give the fathers a voice, because so often in either hospital, I mean, it's changing, but it was like back then, either in a hospital or school setting, they actually want to talk to the mom and not really where the dad has an input. And for many families, dads are also just as important. And I also looked at the idea of spirituality and how that affected them. And almost every single father said, while they, obviously weren't happy that their child had a stroke, it helped them reprioritize their life.
Right.
And they actually were happier. They still had all the issues and the worry and just the day to day, getting all the therapies and financial responsibilities, but they made peace with it and it was all okay.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. You kind of just tackled you kind of helped it wasn't just, like at that time, I mean, you told me some of this stuff over the years, but yeah, at that time, you seemed like you were just helping the eye people, but yeah, you did a lot for the disabled community in general, just as a whole. And that's the thing. This is the type of people, like as we were talking about back before about teachers and, what people get paid and the effort they put in, that's, the stuff I had trouble with the bus drivers and and whatever. And people, of course, people have all this stuff going on with the cops and all that, but it's like, a lot of these jobs, yes, maybe they should get paid more, sure. But, I think a lot of these people see how much they can make and they don't, they go, well, I'm going to just give you a $30,000 effort. I'm not going to give you $40,000 because you're not paying me that. But the jobs that like what you're doing and, cops and firemen and all like these are the most important jobs because you have the most impact on people and, obviously healing and helping and just you're constantly dealing with us and you're what's molding these kids, especially in your profession with, being a teacher and an itinerant and all that. Like you see us and a lot of us are so fragile and beaten down and, life has really kicked us in the ass and now you're presented to heal us. And, again, regardless of what you get paid, how you act and how you, implement what you do really can go a long way for someone like me or Sophia or, somebody who didn't make it. I mean, you could be the bad example of why a kid just said, screw it. Like this was my last chance and now I'm going to go this way. So yeah, like, like what you do or what you have done in your past is, super instrumental and helpful to more than just me.
But if I can make two comments. Number one, until you take your last breath, it's never your last chance.
Right.
It's important to be open to what the possibilities are out there and try different things. The other thing I have to say, T, I never really realized how much, well, maybe not for you, but certainly Sophia or Joe. I mean, when I heard Joe's interview with you, first of course, I was beaming with pride,
Hmm.
but I mean, I guess 'cause I just thought, like, okay, Joe, he's a bright guy. He's a wonderful personality. Everybody loves him. But then he told a story about how some girl looked at his eye and it was like moved or something. And I just felt like so badly. I never knew that. So again, I think a lot of times, and I think a lot of times people without disabilities, they need to be open of like, this is what I need. I need to tell you this story. Maybe you can't help me, but maybe you can. That I feel like, especially in our culture, people are so closed off to sharing. That's why I
Yeah.
think support groups are really important. But I had no idea that he felt badly about himself because all I see is this like wonderful, wonderful guy who is bright, who is personable, who's got the world in front of him. And I never knew he was hurting. So I do feel sadly because I never knew.
Right. But if you look like when like with our classroom, like we were all visually impaired, so like even me, like I was pretty comfortable in that class. Like yes, I wasn't the
Right,
greatest at wanting to speak in front of all the kids, but I joked around. We had a lot of fun,
right,
and my real personality came out more so because we
right.
we know there's really no judgment in that classroom. I'm sure there was some dumb stuff said and whatever, but overall we all like pretty much got along, and there again very little judgment. We all just had a good time, and we really enjoyed each other. But then when you split up to these non-VI classes and stuff like that, that's where is a huge difference. Like we felt comfortable, we felt like we can be ourselves and laugh and tell our stories and stuff. And so you might not got to see some of the harshness that we got to deal with because we felt comfortable. I mean, and that's part of it.
Right.
You're the head of the
And,
class,
and,
so you
right.
it trickles
And this
down.
happened, I think Joe was like in seventh or eighth grade. I mean,
Right,
he
right.
had like a crush on somebody. Yeah.
Right. No, I know what you
Um,
mean. Yeah, yeah. But I'm just saying,
yeah.
like he's in a different classroom at that point, and now he's
Right.
now he's around people that aren't exactly like him,
Right.
and you're not there to protect him in a way. Like you're not, like I said, it trickles down from the head of the class. You're the teacher, and
Right.
your lessons and everything, how you treat everybody. It shows how all the students should treat each other. And so yeah,
But I guess I was just surprised because my view of Joe, and maybe what's hard to understand, like other people's view of you can be very different than how you view yourself.
right.
I just thought he was like one phenomenal guy. And I didn't realize he didn't always think that way. Although I have to say, even if you don't have a vision problem, some girl can give you a funny look
Oh yeah,
and it can be devastating.
yeah,
So,
absolutely.
but yeah.
No, yeah, I'm trying to think. Was there anything else part of your journey? I mean, why did you get into the taking care of the children, like going over there and reading with them, and what was your reasoning
What,
behind?
the little kids?
Yeah, yeah,
Wait, why did I go back to preschool?
to daycare, and yeah, why
Oh,
did you
to
do that?
daycare? So, when I was in hospice, which again I was only in for a year, and only because this way I could get to see my mother more. She was at a facility, and I worked for the facility. Um, and she passed away, and I was sort of like, okay, what should I do with myself? And at that point, my synagogue, it's not my synagogue anymore, but and my niece was there, and her kids went to this preschool, and I thought, like, okay, let me just see if they have anything. So, which actually, interestingly, they had I used to bring students from the Widener School to this daycare center for a work experience. I said, as long as you can put vision kids on the bus, I'm okay with it. So it was great. And then I wasn't working at school at that time, but for years on and off, I would work at this preschool. I ran their after school program. I would, work there over the summer. I ran their summer programs for a couple of years. So when I talked to the woman, I said, oh, if you have anything, let me know. So I started as a sub, and then, of course, it became full time, and I loved it. And I thought I was going to die there. And we had a new director who I didn't appreciate, and we had another staff member who I was friendly with one point, and she just did some stuff I so disagreed with that I just felt I could not work there anymore. And again, I felt badly because I never had a bad work experience. I was
Right.
taking Hebrew classes at the time just for fun, and I was telling the teacher Geely, and she said, "Wait, don't leave after class." And she called this woman Devorah, and she and it again just so happened turned out Devorah wanted to meet with me, and I said, "Okay, well, tell her I'll call her tomorrow." And at that point, I had my great nephew with me because he didn't have school that day or something. And we talked for a long time, and we agreed to meet the following day. It was a Thursday, and I have to tell you, these people that I worked for, which was one of my absolute favorite jobs, they're Orthodox, and they sort of dress in a very modest way. So I said to my nephew, Adam, come on, I got to go get a skirt. And I met with her, and I just absolutely fell in love with her. Our vision of what preschool is was completely in sync. We talked for 2 hours, and basically that was it. The end. She said to me, if you had come 2 weeks earlier, I wouldn't have had anything. 2 weeks later, I wouldn't have had anything. So I started it there, and I've been there for a few years. And at this point, I'm pushing 70. And it was really, really hard because I love it there to leave. But I just felt it's time because there's other things I want to do, and I might go back. They gave me, quote, the Tom Brady Award, which I didn't even know what it meant, but evidently he keeps coming back to play football or something.
Right. Right.
And Tuesday was, I can't even remember. Oh, Tuesday night, we had I thought it was just like end of the year dinner at her house. No, it was a retirement party for me. And
Oh
just
wow.
so
Okay.
much fun and so loving and so caring. Um, and it's really, it was just since yesterday, literally not even 24 hours because I left at 1:15. It's still hard for me to think, am I going to be working again? And I do, I want to be involved with the Rolling Rebels. They are the most phenomenal group, as I said. And I also actually am involved with this organization called Parkin Singers, another phenomenal group. Just ironic because number one, I don't have Parkinson's. And the other thing is I cannot sing. I cannot carry a tune. They don't care. It's fine. A very, very close friend of mine does. And I got involved with them because I used to drive her to the choir. And I've been with them for a number of years. Now her husband's retired, so he does. But just have a really, really good time. Maybe I would become a Braille transcriber if I had the ability to do that. So that seems pretty interesting. So again, I love crocheting. I love needlepoint. I love to read. So I'm just open to new experiences. And if it happens to work out that they need somebody to work with a number of the students, so be it. And if not, it will be okay too.
Right. No, I mean that's. I mean, like I said, I think you don't realize how much you actually impact people because all you. And I'm not just speaking for me. I've spoken to other people
Yeah.
about you, but it's
And
a.
I have to say, it's really nice, even from the school that I just left.
Uh,
It's really incredible. And the school that I quit, literally in a day and a half, there was such an outpouring of support for me, and people went to the administration, and they had to have a meeting, and they were so it did make me feel good. But again, not that I would want to go back there.
right. No, but
Um,
it matters. I mean,
so
yeah, you
and
impact.
I
Yeah.
appreciate that. I it really means even like the letters and the cards the parents send and all the teachers and this one woman Jill, she's so incredibly talented. Um, they decided, okay, this is what they want to do. They made me a beautiful, beautiful painting, and then they took each kid and they have it's of a tree, and they put like each child put their fingerprint on it, and it's just gorgeous. So it really does make a difference. It really that's what lifts your spirit. It's not really the financial. Yes, that's important up to a certain point, but that's the other values are much, much more important. So,
Right. No, I mean, I mentioned you so many times on here, and I tell you outside this and all fair. But yeah, I mean, like I said, at that point in time, whether middle school, high school, when you found me as a when you were teaching me and all, like, I tell you, there's no way I would have gotten through school without you. Like, it's, Miss Johnson played a big part as well, but without you, I would have never met her. Um,
right.
and so, it's just how much you impact people. And again, I think what you do, especially not only for the people with different disabilities, but also just a lot of it is when we're young, even with the daycare stuff, because again, that's where they're the most impressionable and that's where they're the most vulnerable. And if you can make an impact on them then, because there's so many kids that are just going through, foster care and just, their household is just torn apart or, whatever, their neighbors doing drugs or something. Like there's stuff that's all around them that it can easily impact them in a totally negative direction that, people like you matter to keep us on the right track and give us good influences. And, but, yeah, so I mean, and you're one of them. I mean, look, when I do this, even now, like with the podcast, your feedback is actually very important for me because it makes me feel good about what I'm doing because I'm so in my own head that I'm constantly just like, oh God, I sucked and whatever else. And so then when you actually give me feedback on, especially like the episodes when I do by myself, where I'm like, oh, all I think is I'm just rambling and like now. Um, but you actually will give me like really good criticism, not criticism, but yeah, I mean, even some, but like in general, just really good feedback to make me feel like, okay, yeah, that's kind of what I intended and you picked up on it. So great. You're also very smart. So maybe there's that too. Um, but yeah, it keeps me going just on just with this podcast. Cause there's been times where I just didn't want to do it anymore. Cause I was just feeling so low about, of course, numbers and other stuff. But
And see, if I could just end with, you used to drive me a little crazy. You and Medina and a
no,
couple other kids.
not
Yes,
me.
yes, yes, you. And when we started this, or when you started the podcast, and because I actually bought it from my support group at CHOP, I would have the parents' journal, and they found that was really helpful. And when I said to you, and you said, no, I don't think so, but maybe a podcast. And I thought, okay, whatever, technology is not my thing, but that sounds good.
Uh-huh.
And I just am so proud of you. I see such growth in the year of you feeling better about yourself. It's also you've come out of yourself. You're so interested in helping others, and it's just absolutely wonderful. And again, I can't be prouder of you.
I appreciate it. I actually have one more question and we can end it.
Okay.
As you know, I like to ask people like to give advice for, whatever we're talking about. And for your case, like, is there any advice you have for anybody who, I don't know, like a young Miss Robbins or someone who's trying to get into the same field and wants to help people with disabilities or some sort of niche like that? Yeah. Do you have any advice for, the young Lois?
If right, if you have the love, that's all that matters. You have the desire to help others. That's all that matters. The other stuff all comes. I used to be able to say, like when I would have a student teacher, I could meet somebody and tell them if they were going to be a good teacher or not.
Right.
Because you have to have the caring, you have to have the spirit. And so, unfortunately, in today's day and age, you have to be able to put up with a lot of paperwork and, or computer work, I should say. But just know, really, and when you have a student like TJ and Sophia and, Joe and Medina and all the others, it really, there's no amount of money that could make up for the joy that you're going to get from your students and seeing them grow and develop.
Yeah. I mean, couldn't have been happier for me when I graduated high school. Um, and yeah, I mean,
I still have the picture of you and I.
so do
I look
I.
so young then. And you're still like 6 feet taller than I am.
Yeah, I'm not even that tall. Yeah.
Yeah, on my phone. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
No, but that reflects
But
on you.
it
I
was
mean, like
wonderful.
you had a huge part in that. Like it's just, I got to take a picture with
And
you and
and
Miss
you,
Johnson. So
right. And you have done it great. I mean, you have developed a life for yourself. And again, it might not be the perfect life that you would have envisioned, but it's a good life.
yeah,
And I think for everybody to be able to say, I'm having a good life is important.
yeah.
And
Well,
don't let anybody else define who you are. You
Absolutely.
define who you want to be.
Absolutely. Well, I thank you for this. I have nothing but love for you. So,
Thanks, T. I feel the same way about you.
I'll,
And now that I'm retired, maybe I'll come up to Williamsport and visit you and your grandma.
you keep saying that. Yeah, I hope you do. You're more than welcome. Bullet's
Oh,
laying right here. He'd like to meet you.
okay, I'm not a real cat person, but
It's all right.
okay, I'll meet Bullet.
He's a good cat. Bullet.
Yeah.
She doesn't want to meet you, Bullet. Sorry.
No, 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 don't say that.
He's half asleep. He don't care.
Okay.
He just wants to lay here next to me. But yeah, again, thank you. And I said, I know you're probably not going to listen to this one because you don't want to hear your voice, but still, like I said, it'll come out. I know a lot of people are actually looking forward to hearing this one. So,
Oh, great.
so should be fun. And at some point, hopefully, I'm going to try to get Miss Johnson as well.
Oh, that would be great. That would be great. Well, thank you, T. I think this your podcast made a lot of difference, and I have loved listening to people with such incredible lives
Yeah.
who have overcome what other people would consider insurmountable obstacles, and they've done it, and they've made a great life.
Yeah, absolutely.
I really appreciate you.
I appreciate you as well. So thank you, and we'll obviously talk soon.
Okay, thanks, T.
All right, bye.
Bye now.
I can't find my phone. People are like, well, you're on it. But no, it's Bluetooth. Okay. I actually have an interview coming right up. I planned them so close together and didn't know how this was going to happen. But, whew. Yeah, of course. I love her to death. She's an amazing person. And, I'm so happy that turned out the way it did. I knew it would. And actually her episode, this is pretty close to when her episode's coming out because I knew I can get her anytime because we talk almost weekly. So, yeah. Bullet's right here. A big guy. Okay. Yeah, guys, I got to get on to my next interview, but I appreciate all the support and please subscribe and share, comment if you'd like, but just, get it out there so we can get more people to hear this and we can help them and, just keep people just knowing that they're not alone. So that's the goal. Yeah, guys, I'll see you on the next one and appreciate the support. Thanks, guys. Bye.